Humanity has suddenly exploded into a geological force. Our population numbers have skyrocketed. We're the most numerous mammal on the planet. Every one of us has to breathe air, drink water, eat food, clothe and shelter ourselves, which already gives us a huge ecological footprint. But we've amplified that with explosive growth in technology, with a consumptive demand and a global economy now that exploits the entire planet as a source of raw materials. When you add that all up together, we have become a geological force. We're altering the chemical, physical, and biological features of the planet on a geological scale. That's why the Nobel Prize winner, Paul Crutzen, calls this the Anthropocene Era, the time when we are acting like geological forces. And the terrible aspect is, in that time, as we were becoming this new force of nature, we underwent a tremendous transformation in the last century. We went from being a rural village species, and any farmer understands that we depend on weather, seasons, climate, but we moved from being a rural village animal to a big city dweller. In my country of Canada, 85% of us now live in big cities. And in a big city, it's easy to think, well, you know, we don't need nature, as long as we've got parks out there to go and camp and play. I mean, who needs nature? My biggest priority is my job. And so in a city, the view is the economy is our highest priority. And we see that happening around the world, where we're told, no, we can't afford to do anything about reducing greenhouse gas emissions. That'll destroy our economy. So we elevate the economy above ecology. And ecology is telling us loud and clear that we are now undermining the very life support systems of the planet, all in the name of progress, which is economic growth. So we're at a crisis point. For 40 years, leading scientists of the planet have been telling us we are at the crunch position. We've already started the experiment with climate change. The oceans are a mess. Forests have vanished. We've got to do something if we're going to ensure any kind of a future for our children. Now, I had always thought, as I got involved in the environmental movement, that the problem was humans are taking too much out of the environment and putting too much waste and toxic material back in. So in my way of thinking, I thought the solution, we've got to legislate how much can we take out and how much can we put back into the environment. And then you enforce those laws. But as I thought about that, I thought, well, that's crazy. We don't know enough. We don't know enough to legislate all this new technology coming in. When DDT was found to kill insects, we thought that was a great idea. Paul Mueller, who discovered this, won a Nobel Prize in 1948. How could we have legislated DDT when we didn't even know there was a phenomenon of biomagnification until eagles began to disappear? CFCs, same thing. We thought CFCs were great. When I first heard that CFCs were destroying the ozone layer, my response was, what ozone layer? I didn't know there was an ozone layer up there. Over and over again, we keep being hammered because we don't know enough to anticipate long-term consequences. And that was, for me, a real crisis.
That doesn't mean, though, that we shouldn't act now.
No, well,
things through policy.
It requires a different way of looking. And it was when I became involved as a filmmaker with a group of First Nations, these Aboriginal people in BC, who were fighting against logging in their community, even though many of the loggers were Haida. Their people, they had over 50% unemployment. The logging was putting economic value into their community. But when I asked one of the leaders of the fight against logging, he was a Haida, and I said, why, what difference does it make to you if the trees are gone? And he said, well, of course, we'll still be here if the trees are gone, but we'll be just like everybody else. We won't be Haida anymore. That just blew me away, because it was that simple statement was a radically different way of looking at the world. He was saying we don't end at our skin or our fingertips. The land, the air, the water, the soil, the trees, the fish, all of that is what makes us who we are. The land embodies our history, our culture. The very reason why we're on this planet is told to us by our connection with the land. Destroy that and you destroy who we are. That meaning all vanishes. And around the world, Aboriginal people are fighting, and it's not about money. It's about that connection to place. It's about Mother Earth. And as I began to reflect on that, I realized that what they were teaching me is corroborated by science. That is, we were wrong in thinking the environment's out there and we are here. The reality is we are created by the elements coming from the earth. The moment we were born and left our mother's body, we needed air. And from that point to the last breath before we die, we take air deep into our bodies and we filter whatever is in it. What kind of a creature, knowing that we are air, would then proceed to think we can use air as a toxic dump and somehow not pay the price for that? And it's the same with water, and it's the same with the land that gives us our food. It's the same with all green things that give us our energy. And that's a radically different perspective, because it tells us there is no environment out there. We are the earth. And whatever we do to the earth, we do directly to ourselves.
So, can you, in very brief, say what your kind of hopes for this, and for what you're feeling about what Bhutan is doing here in the world? And as short as you can make that.
What is happening in this kingdom is something absolutely dramatic and exciting to me, because environmentalism has fundamentally failed. I've dedicated 50 years of my life to the movement, but many of what we thought were victories 30, 40 years ago, stopping logging, stopping dams, stopping drilling for oil, we're fighting the same fights over again because those weren't true victories. We didn't change the way we look at the world and see our place in the world. Aboriginal people have taught me a radically different way of looking at the world. What Bhutan, this tiny kingdom, because of its isolation for so long, came into the 20th century with eyes that could see all of the mistakes. We who were embedded in it, we couldn't see it because we were a part of all of the change going on. They could see, oh my goodness, that's not what we want. That's not our idea of development. Economies are to serve us. There's got to be a higher goal than just more, than just growth. Growth by itself does nothing for us. Here is Bhutan emerging into the 21st century with an innocence that comes from having been isolated from the current paradigm that we've monocultured around the world. So it's very, very powerful, because I don't think people can say, oh, what the heck's their agenda? You know, they're trying to get more power or something. Their very innocence is the power to what they are telling us. And for many of us who've devoted our lives to fighting for Mother Earth, this is the inspiration that will take us out of those local skirmishes to see that we've got to change the very way we see how we live on Earth and our interconnectedness with everything.
I want you to tell me what you think the world might look like 50 years from now.
Well, there are many ways of looking at the world. If we carry on with business as usual, I have great fears for the way that my grandchildren are going to live. We're going to be really scrambling because we've already set in motion radical change to the atmosphere and to the oceans, and I don't know whether it's even reversible. The possibility, though, of living in a way in which local communities are the units of survival that give us the meaning and joy in our lives, where we live, work, and play in communities that are relatively self-sufficient, where we have where the money, the wealth that is generated continues to circulate within that population, where caring for each other is a part of how we measure our success and progress. It means getting away from the materialistic world that is now driving the economy of the planet. Now let me tell you something. My father was my great teacher. He died when he was 85. I moved in to live with him for the last 2 months of his life, and he kept saying, David, I die a rich man. He was never a rich man. I was supporting him. I bought him his house. I supported him to his end. But he kept saying that. All we ever talked about in those last 2 months, and it was a joyous 2 months in my life, was family, friends, and neighbors, and the things that we did together. And that, to my father, was his wealth. And in that, he was truly a wealthy man. And he taught me there, stuff has got nothing to do with the things that you really are joyous and happy and proud of at the end of your life.